first of all, it's a tradition that's been handed down for, several thousand years. Here in America, for example, the mural painting goes back about 5,000 years, and I'm talking about formal mural painting in permanent buildings. And I'm not talking about like, that even further back than that, even the cavemen were doing paintings on walls and all of that. But mural painting is certainly something that is a tradition that has been handed down, where people document their own culture and their own lives and their activities, And I would say that mural painting, therefore, has a significance or an importance nowadays, where people can put their own views, out in public, where people can see what this country is made of, and it's made of many different cultures and all of that. And that's one example of how a mural can be used to maybe educate people as to what other cultures are composed of and what they consist of. Done a lot of sketching and a lot of, I used to doodle a lot, but I never really studied art until I was in my 20s. And that's when I took a course. I never even took a course in high school. But then in the university, I took art, an art elective course, and I just started getting interested, and then I just got into painting little by little, and here I am. Well, the one on First Street is something that I just recently completed building, and it's very much like a billboard. It's sort of the same technique, except it's got a different shape. It's not a rectangle like most of the billboards are. And I built it with the same kind of materials that they use for billboards and all of that, except we're going to do it, paint it with acrylic paints, like I do most of the murals, for several reasons. Because like acrylic paints are pretty safe. They're not toxic, for example. They're not poisonous or anything. So they're pretty safe for kids to use and all of that. Of course, a present project that I'm working on right now, where I hope to incorporate, about at least 30 people have worked on it so far, and it's not even half done as far as the painting goes. The construction took quite a while to do, but as far as the painting goes, we had about 30 people paint on it already, and it's not even half done. So I imagine that we'll have pretty much, at least 100 people that are going to participate in the painting of it. And this should be, it's kind of a one-of-a-kind thing, because I don't know of any other murals that have been constructed and painted specifically, to paint a mural on besides billboards. And this one is no billboard. Once you see it, it's got a shape all its own, and it's kind of sculptural, and at the same time, it's a freestanding mural. It's what it is. And I don't know of any other one that's up that it's a freestanding mural like this one. It's probably a first for Texas, if not the U.S. I think if they're properly done, and especially if they're facing in the right direction, and the right direction is north, because they get less sunlight. Because, for example, if the sun hits it all day, if it's facing south, for example, which is the worst direction for it to face, the sun will hit it just about all day long, and you know how hot the sun gets around here. So the thing is, if you face them north, and if they have good protection and a good varnish and all of that, they should last, they could last a good, over 10 years, 10, 15 years, something like that. Like everything else, it's everything's going up, paints are getting more expensive, even brushes are getting more expensive. But there's a lot of ways to cut down on the expense. For example, you can take care of the brushes, and keep using them over and over. But if you, like for example, sometimes, since I do use a lot of people, and I do have like a mural painting team, where I have a lot of kids and, grown-ups and all ages, and people help out in the painting. And I usually try to tell them to take care of the brushes, for example, never let them dry with paint on them and that kind of stuff. And, that kind of, cuts down on the expense a lot, because brushes are getting real expensive, and so is the paint. But I would say that relatively speaking, to do a mural is really a lot cheaper, a lot cheaper way to get something out to the public, as opposed to, doing it some other way. So for what you get, I would say it's not so expensive. It comes down to a couple of pennies per day or something like that. Murals are pretty large most of the time. They're usually bigger than an easel painting or something on canvas. And for that reason, I think, it's easier, to have a team to work on the larger piece, and at the same time, they can be learning, hopefully, to someday do their own murals, and have a team of their own. First of all, what we did was get a survey of the neighborhood there. We went around about a 3-block radius and got opinions from the people that live there, since they are going to have to live with it and all of that. So the thing was to get all the ideas, formulate some kind of theme, or some kind what the subject matter was going to be, and then the thing was to make bring up some kind of composition, put together some kind of composition where all these different and diverse subjects, could be tied together somehow on the Pan Am stage. Okay, and there are a lot of angles on this building. There are walls that have a lot of corners on them. So one of the ways that we kind of tied it in was trying to make what we call destroying space, or going across angles and make it seem like they're not there, making it seem like it's a flat wall instead of having all kinds of corners. One of the ways that we did that was to extend a chalk line. A chalk line is a line that carpenters use to make straight lines to cut wood with and all of that. And we used this to make a line that divided the stage in several sections by standing at a point away from the stage and viewing it, and get a visually straight line. Now, when you see the line up close, it's really very crooked, because it goes around the corners and all of that, and it's really, it's really not a straight line. But to your eye, when you get away from it, you can see a very straight line that divides the stage in several pieces, in several sections. So that was kind of the first thing we did, was divide it up, and as in most of the murals, you kind of have to have some kind of a diagonals and horizontal lines that divide up the space, so you can make a composition that kind of ties together, that has good balance. Okay, so after we did all these lines there, which we use as guidelines, then we took the subjects and we went with what the subjects were and placed them in somewhat of a chronological order. For example, some of them were about history. A lot of people were asking about for us to paint historical scenes and historical characters, and we kind of placed them in a sequence. And going with the guidelines, then we started sketching them in, little by little, until most of it, or at least most of the front, was already was drawn in. In some cases, we didn't even draw, like on part of the wall where we have a scene from the Mexican Revolution. That was painted directly. There was no charcoal used or anything. It was just painted with brushes straight on, and there weren't even any drawings for it. It was just spontaneous, and it happened. So the paint was just put on there, and then we kind of figured out and made corrections and adjustments as they were needed. But going just with the compositional lines, or the lines that I mentioned earlier. The mural that's on East 2nd Street, I remember we were taking a list and trying to keep a list of all the people that would go after school and all of that. And we were only there about, I guess we did it in about 3 months. And we got 100 names on that list, and then we just stopped taking names. There was, the list got full, and about 100 people painted on there in all ages, from about 7 or 8 years old to a lady that was an elderly lady that was about 70 or 80 years old already, that lived there across the street. She came by and painted also. So that's something else, that the age span is pretty wide. The name of it is the oral tradition, or la tradición oral. And one lady really impressed us, because when we asked her what she'd like to see on it, she kept telling us that she was real proud. One of the questions was, what was the most, or what is the most significant time of your life, or I forget the question exactly, but something like that. And she referred to the time, the present, right now is when I'm the happiest and all that, because, I didn't have much of a formal education or anything like that, but I can tell my daughter and my son-in-law all about their past and all about their history and their heritage and all of that, and they don't know anything about it, and they're university graduates, so that kind of made us think quite a bit. Here's university graduates, and here's an old lady that has hardly any formal education at all. I think she said 5th or 6th grade in Mexico way back, like in the 20s or I don't know, how long ago, but she was an elderly lady. So we made her the theme, the main theme revolved around that. Even though some other, an elderly gentleman, for example, and some other people said pretty much the same thing about them knowing about their heritage and respecting it and all of that. But this lady put it in a nutshell. When she said she was educating her college graduate daughter and son-in-law, without any formal education. So we were so impressed that we made it kind of the main theme of the mural, where the oral tradition or handing down of tradition is necessarily left to the elderly, where the institution or the educational institutions have maybe failed, at least to a certain extent. I am kind of pleased to say that just lately or recently, I've visited several schools where this is being, really kind of alleviated a little bit, or the problem is being dealt with, where Chicano kids or Mexican American kids are picking up a little bit of their own history and getting a little more sense of their background, instead of being in a void where they don't know where they came from, and it's hard to figure out where you're going if you don't know where you came from. So knowing about your own history is important, and so I'm pleased to say that a couple of schools that I visited where teachers are really doing a good job in bringing these things to mind and educating kids about their own background. And that goes along with something about this mural here, where you have a chicanita, or a little girl in the center reading a book, but at the same time she's reading maybe about herself, about her own heritage, as suggested with the symbols around her. But that is not to say that is something that she's going to keep for herself and that's it, because there's a black little girl and there's a white little girl that are learning about about Mexican history or the Mexican culture and all of that, which is only to eliminate ignorance and provide for a little respect. So so you can have education is something totally positive if you really approach it with an open mind and not close the doors to any cultures or any other things, but let's learn about everything, and including ourselves and everybody around us. Well, I'm glad to say that so far, at least 90%, or well, actually, just about everybody that talks to me about the murals are very positive about them. They seem to appreciate them pretty much, which is one of the reasons that I've continued doing that stuff. Working on murals specifically. Instead of doing more private stuff or small paintings at my house or at my studio or something like that. It seems like people kind of react kind of favorably toward them, and as a matter of fact, part of the reaction that I see is, besides them commenting and saying that they like them or they appreciate them or all of that, one of the main things that tells me that they appreciate them is that they actually go out there and help me do them. And they contribute ideas and all of that, which is one of the reasons also that I've continued to conduct surveys every time I'm going to do one. Every time I get ready to do a mural, I usually conduct some kind of survey and talk to a group of people, either one at a time, or I get them together in a meeting or something, and we decide on what's going to be what the subject matter is going to be. So it's a matter of public opinion and then public participation. So the participation I get is another way I can tell that people are really reacting pretty positively to the murals themselves.
Soy de Texas, es mi orgullo ser chico.